Hi, I'm Teresa Elling. Welcome to The Peaceful Home. This is part 2 in the series on building sibling and friend relationships. And as most of you know, with children, the fighting, the quarreling, inability to share, it really wears on parents. It can be one of the most stressful things about parenting. When your kids aren't getting along, it just brings anxiety to the home, the opposite of a peaceful home. So we're going to go through a few more things today in regards to that. If you watched my first video of this series, you may think that I'm not about sharing at all, that I'm about making sure each child has their own property and they never have to share if they don't want to. But that's really not the truth. That's just the starting place for authentic sharing. Forcing a child to share is not sharing. If your child is struggling to share, you want to come alongside them and help them, show them how to be generous, how to care for one another, how to sacrifice for someone else. These are life lessons that are learned in your home. So one of the basic things that you can do if you're looking at community property, which we had a lot of things in our game and toy closets, balls outside, all sorts of things the kids could play with. First come, first served. You know, if you get there first and you check out a toy, you get to use it first. It's pretty simple. But that doesn't mean that you can't prefer someone else. When a sibling comes along and wants to play with you, you encourage your children to share with one another. An easy way to do that, I'm sure you've all used this at some point, is to set a timer. If you can't agree or you both got there at the same time, Jane gets it for 15 minutes and then Billy gets it for 15 minutes. Pretty simple. I remember reading in a book a while ago, this book is now out of print and it was so good, but it talked about a family where the siblings were arguing over who got to use the popcorn popper because it was one of the things they loved to do was pop popcorn on their movie night. And they could not get the children to stop arguing. And finally they said, popcorn popper is getting put away. And when the two of you can come up with a solution of how to use this in a mature way, then we'll get it down again. And it took those kids about 5 minutes to come up with a plan that they were going to alternate nights on who got to pop the popcorn, and whoever popped it also cleaned up. And they very quickly came up with their own solution. So often kids are just in the habit of arguing, and we almost encourage it by never leading them to settle the issue. Sometimes the item can be taken away completely. So for example, let's say that your children are arguing over 2 popsicles that are left in your freezer, and there's a purple one and an orange one, and they both want the purple one. Well, if they can't come to a decision and they're bickering over it, a lot of times I would just say, you know what, no popsicle. Putting that away, there's celery and carrots for snack, and I walk away. You don't need to lecture them. You don't need to point out the faults in their character that they're not able to share with one another. Simply remove the item and walk away, and they will figure out really quickly that they could have found a way to solve that dilemma. Make sure you just don't pull the popsicles out 10 minutes later, but maybe the next day they might be able to come up with a solution. When you're seeing bickering that almost turns into fighting, one of the key questions I would do is just walk into a room and say, hey guys, is everyone having fun? That question would immediately bring up if someone was feeling that they were being bullied or cheated. Usually the person that was not acting in the right way would say, oh, everything's fine. And one of the other children would say, no, we're not having fun. That lets you know what's going on so that you can step in and hopefully help your children resolve the situation. I will say that one of the reasons this is so stressful for parents is it takes time. It takes a lot of time to be involved while your children are playing together, to train them and teach them. You cannot just stick your kids in a room and expect them to play nicely and figure it out by themselves. It won't happen. You'll end up with sibling rivalry or rivalry between friends. I often had to check my heart and say, why do I feel so angry and frustrated when my kids bicker? And honestly, The main reason usually is that I was selfish and I didn't want to stop doing what I was doing to go tend to their arguing. And so that for me just had to be submitted to the Lord. I had to give that time, my day, whatever was going on, and release that and tend to what the Lord was putting right in front of me, which is my children. And they needed me in that moment. So remember that it really isn't supposed to be easy. If you're thinking, oh, my kids fight all the time, I don't know what's wrong with them. Well, it's normal for kids to fight. They have to be taught how to get along. A quick note, going back to children's individual property, so things that they own that are in their special box that the other children aren't allowed to get into. One thing that we made very clear, once in a while we would have a child that would take one of those special items, bring them down, play in front of everyone, and siblings would say, we want to play too. Well, no, this is mine. Whenever we saw that attitude, we addressed it. Just because something belongs to you does not give you the right to be selfish and unkind. So we would pull that child aside, and this is key. Anytime that you need to discipline, to talk with a child, please don't do it in front of others. Please pull them aside privately. We would take them aside and say, do you think it's kind to basically flaunt your toy in front of your siblings and friends and not allow them to play with it? And we would talk it through and we would give them the choice. This does belong to you. You do not have to share it, but you need to go play with it by yourself in your room. If you're going to bring it out in front of the whole family, then you need to be willing to share. That was one way we addressed the heart attitudes. Another thing we would do is teach our children a couple of very important phrases. One of them is, please stop, I am not having fun. And we did training sessions where we sat down and we role modeled and practiced using that phrase. The reason this is important is that kids often play. They wrestle, they tickle, they chase each other. No, stop. And they're really having fun. So when they use this phrase, please stop, I'm not having fun, that meant you stop whatever you're doing. And we took this very seriously. We took this as seriously as a child running into the road. Like, we are not messing with this phrase. If someone says this, they mean they're done, and you will not violate them by continuing. You have to show honor and respect. You have to say no. And I think we can all think of ways that this can be applied into the teenage years in relationships, that no means no. In this case, we make it very clear, not just a passive no, but please stop, I am not having fun. Very important phrase to teach your children, and then teach them how to respond when someone says it to them. I'll interject a quick story about this phrase, please stop, I'm not having fun. Kevin and I received, I think it was a text message from one of our daughters, and she was telling us about an argument that she had with her sister. And her sister kept sticking her feet in her face. And she said, get your smelly feet away. And her sister wouldn't stop. And so then she said, please stop, I'm not having fun. And she said, and my sister stuck her feet right back in my face. Now I have to tell you that my girls were in their early 20s when they sent us this message. And my daughter concluded by saying, I don't even want to live in a world where our magic words don't work. And we were dying. We were laughing so hard because we hadn't heard our kids use that phrase in a very long time. And now it was being used, and they were laughing over something that actually was very important to them in their childhood. So my second phrase, these are the magic words for sharing. This is so helpful in training, and you can start this probably by 18 months. As soon as they're starting to speak even a little bit, you can begin to teach them, may I have that when you're done? And these are truly magical words. I have seen these just totally change a child's attitude towards the quarreling that was happening before I came in on the scene. And so you teach, say, Susie, She wants Billy's truck and she wants to take it from him, and an argument starts. I would say, Susie, what do we say when we want something? May I please have that when you're done? And she would repeat that. And then we tell Billy, now Billy, you answer her. When I'm finished, you may have it. That simple interaction is amazing. I'm serious. You have to try this. You have to try this with your kids, sit them down, train them how to use it. Often I've seen an argument ensuing where one child is not going to yield. They are not going to give in. They are not going to share, and they just dig their feet in the ground. And then a sibling or friend says, may I have that when you're done? And they say, yes, you can have that when I'm done. And they kind of continue to play with it, but you can tell they're ready to move on anyway. But it somehow puts the control back with that initial child who has the object. They get to decide when they're done, when they're finished. And so often they'll play for a few seconds and then they'll say, here you go, I'm done. And often hand over a toy right away. Try it. It works incredibly well. I've trained children that come into our home for a play date to sit down with them, play with them, teach them. This is also excellent if you only have one child. You as the parent have to be the friend in the play situation. Sit down and play with them. Make sure that they don't always get everything they want. You have a toy they want? Oh, I'm happy to give that to you when I'm finished. Make sure you have them ask you first. May I have that when you're done? Give that a try, see how it works, train your children, and it will really change how they play together. It will put an end to a lot of the quarreling. Thanks for joining me on The Peaceful Home.